Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lenton, and this is episode 29. Welcome to the Focused Professional Podcast. Today's guest is well known on the international photography circuit as a speaker and a judge. He's a photography printing expert. He's also an illustrator and has other creative talents as well. It's Dario Righetto. Hello, Dario.
Hello, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So, with all these creative talents that you've got, your illustration and your understanding of judging images, creating images, design, and so on, what drew you to the photography industry in particular? Because there must have been quite a lot of possibilities open to you.
That's an interesting one. Actually, it's been a sort of convoluted and articulated path that drove me into photography. And it all started in a paint shop where one of my neighbors was actually a proper painter. And instead of running after a ball and playing football like all my mates, I was spending my afternoon when I was a kid in his shop. And I was looking at him painting. And actually I was painting myself. I was drawing, doing things, doodling, and he was teaching me the basics. And so from that point on up, all the different steps in my life actually took me closer and closer to photography, even where I wasn't aware of. And in fact, when the previous chapters in my life were public affairs, intelligence in the Italian Air Force, I was an officer, and then I founded a web agency, and the step next was joining Graphic Studio. And Graphic Studio, as you probably know, you must be familiar with the brand, is the Italian leader in bookbinding and printing in general. Professional printing.
Yeah.
And so from that point, the leap was quite small. I was actually home. I was where I was supposed to be, I guess, so in this world.
Is it something you've had a connection with the arts for all these years? Is it something that's always been kind of a passion that you've turned to, even when then you were in the Air Force and so on? Did you still turn to the arts then, as you did as a boy?
Oh, yeah, I did. And, now that you said that, I was smiling by myself because, first of all, maybe people don't know, but I was born in Venice. And when you're lucky enough to, to grow up, surrounded by those buildings, mosaics and paintings and churches and monuments of any sort and kind, actually, I feel so blessed that probably I could set my sort of sensitivity to art and beauty in general to a very high pitch. And, I consider myself so lucky that growing up there actually made me, or I would say, train and boost my brain, my art brain, to a level where no matter what I was doing, either being an officer in the Air Force or a web developer or later on a marketing director, the way I see the world, the way my brain works, it's always using basically artistic, I would say, guidelines.
Yeah.
And so, I can't help myself when I look everywhere, and it could be the supermarket or it could be a beautiful landscape. I'm seeing lights, shades, lines, perspectives, depth, patterns, color palettes everywhere. It's kind of, I guess, an addiction, a good one to have.
Yeah. I mean, I've had sort of strange moments sometimes when I've been out with my wife and I've said, "Oh, look at the light over there," and she's like, "Over where?" And I said, "Well, on that wheelie bin." She said, "It's just a bin, oh, but the light,
I know the feeling.
So, what is it that really gets you out of bed in the morning to do this kind of work? Then to be involved in the photography industry, what drives you?
Well, I actually, I was timid in the first place. I was kind of shy, and not really sure about my place in this industry.
Hmm.
Actually, I was kind of skeptical. And, when I joined this industry, it was the early 20s. And so that was where the digital cameras and the digital workflows were taking over. I was coming from an analogic world
Hmm.
and driving the transition, actually. So I'm old enough, actually, I should say. And I was seeing all these revolutionary technologies coming in and taking over and intimidating someone or propelling someone else and
Mm.
creating new deals, new businesses, new brands, surging as leaders and others falling inexorably. And I won't name brands, but
No,
we all
no.
know what happened to a red and yellow big logo that
Mm-hmm.
for decades was,
Mm-hmm.
was equal to Google for a search engine, right? So the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so when you see that, and then you move your first steps into this kind of funny world where there are amazing human beings with so much creativity and a bigger heart than themselves, but there are also adventurers and other people like more on the trade side of the thing. And you feel like, okay, where's the balance here? Where's the polar star? Where are all these people going to? And
Mm-hmm.
how can I help this community if I can do anything helpful? And that was my first approach. And so, long story short, nowadays my mission is to help people.
Mm.
And when I say help, I mean helping them, carving out whatever is the potential in their heart, head, and hands.
Mm. Yeah, so that's a lovely way to put it then. Yeah, so you're helping people to bring out the best in their work because you help people to print for competitions as well,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah. That's something that really, really gives me great time. I really enjoy it. Like a kid in a toy store. it's it's bigger than me. I can't help it.
You've had some fantastic results with it as well. In the last year's print competition at the Society's convention and Icon Awards and so on, you've had some real successes from the photographers that have used your print services.
Yeah, I am so grateful. A, for their trust in the first place, and B, because I saw their faces.
Mm,
And when they were running up to the stage and getting their trophies, I felt overwhelmed with joy and pride as well for
mm,
them, for what
mm,
they could achieve actually. And so, yeah, being part of a fraction of their path to the trophy from being I don't know, either a newcomer or an established business, doesn't matter really. It's the fact that whenever they approach me, I feel now I have a mission, now I have someone to help,
mm.
and yeah, and that what drives me really.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of photographers know very, very little about printing. I mean, for me, when I did my fellowship, I was starting almost from zero because as a commercial photographer, you just don't print it. It always goes to graphic designers who then do what they're going to do with it. You don't get that step of interacting with the printer. So a little bit more so perhaps when you're a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer and so on, but it's quite a specialist area. How do you find photographers' knowledge tends to be? What sort of things would you say to them are the basics that they need to know if you feel they don't already?
So, first of all, thank you for this question because it gives me the opportunity to, I would say, debunk a myth,
Hmm.
which is printing is difficult. And at the same time, it is and it isn't, in a way
Right.
that it shouldn't be intimidating and it shouldn't be a sort of taboo where either because, like you said, maybe the genre that you shoot doesn't take you down the line of printing for whatever reason, like you said, commercial photography, for instance,
Mm,
where art designers and art directors and then agencies and whoever is in charge will take care of that, or because simply a lot of photographers just think that it's too much time consuming, too complicated, not worth the pain,
mm,
and not bringing any value or any other value to their business. Now we have to I think we have to discern between what does it mean bringing value to your business, because I'm not here to, to give a business lesson about the cost of goods, the markups and these type of things.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about from an artistic standpoint. As a photographer all around, if you want to be a photographer, you have to remember, that's what I say every time I give a class or a workshop. Photography is a word that actually is composed by two words from Greek. And one is photos and the other one is graphia. And it means writing with light. Now, if you don't print, you're not actually writing. You're capturing the light, but you're not writing. So I jokingly say, you're not even a photographer. You're an image maker. You're not a proper photographer. Do you want to be a photographer? Is that your aspiration? Of course it is. So let's do this together. And it doesn't have to be for a living. It has to be for you in the first place. And either you enter competitions, or even if you don't enter competitions, the fact that you can handle the process or you have good idea of how that works makes you a better photographer. And in fact, if we can do the reverse engineering, when we look at these amazing pictures, these amazing prints on the gallery, on the, whoever makes it through the 80s and above, right? So all
merited
these,
images and above.
All these merits and all the, or even more so, the gold awards, the 100s, the 98. When we see these type of things, just try for a second, how did this author achieve this impeccable result? If you take the steps backwards, you will see that you can actually decipher the code, and you will go back to the lighting pattern, to the color palettes, to the creative idea. And at that point, you have unpacked the amazing talent in front of you, and you can actually do the same. You can start thinking, oh, now I see. So next time I can do this, or I can do that, or I shouldn't do this, and I shouldn't do that, and I will achieve a better result. And it doesn't matter if you're a wedding photographer, a landscape photographer, a commercial one, babies, pets, food, you name it. Doesn't matter. The mindset, the way we approach photography, the search, this never-ending crusade looking for beauty. That's what it should be. And it could be that you take a picture of a hamburger, or you take a picture of a lovely dog, or you take a picture of a cathedral. Doesn't make any difference. Because you're right, there's beauty in a bean just because of the light shape reflecting on the lead. And for some reason, that's all of a sudden that becomes something interesting. And let me add one funny episode. I mentioned before my mentor when I was a kid, this painter. I couldn't be, with hindsight, I can say that my taste or my style couldn't be, more far from his. He was more like a pop culture type of modern thingy. So very geometrical, very, very much about colors, color patterns, and looking for shapes in everyday's life. I remember he was painting cranes, like solid orange, yellow, red cranes at the harbor in Venice, and doing things, and everything was almost abstract. So not exactly my vibe, but again, it doesn't matter, because I could absorb from him the love and the passion and the logic and the sense of beauty that then every one of us can condense into something. And it doesn't matter if it's a crane, a bin, or a dog, or a baby.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we can all find beauty somewhere, and we can all find a way of expressing it. And I mean, I always think, seeing an image that's been printed well it's a different level to just seeing it on a screen. And sometimes, I guess, what puts people off is they think, I don't understand the papers. I look at it and think, oh, that's expensive, but I could go somewhere else and get it printed cheaply. And it's on that, the thin floppy paper that you tend to get from these places. And what they don't realize then is the difference it makes to the image, but also, as you were helpfully pointing out in your talk at the convention last year, how long that image is going to last and look right.
Right.
Talking about archival quality, saying that how, if you want an image to keep, you want it to last, there's a lot there for people to consider. So I don't know, how would you condense it down to make it as simple as possible for someone who's doing this for the first time and wants to get it right and is just a bit nervous of perhaps having to spend a lot of money on test after test after test? What would you say to them?
That's true. That's true. And that's part of the intimidating factor that I was naming before. Some photographers simply don't want to waste time, let alone money, in buying expensive paper. It's true. It's expensive for a reason, because it's gorgeous. And I would say, don't do it thinking with your business side of the brain. Just do it because you're treating yourself. And you should treat yourself because you have just invested thousands and thousands of, pounds, dollars, euros, whatever, in glasses, cameras, sensors, Adobe license, and amazing screens, and you name it. And all of that deserve the last bit, the last step in the process, which is a nice paper and the correct way of putting all this information coming from the photons that you capture down to the bit that you are editing, down to the ink droplets on paper. And this transmutation, this sort of alchemic process that converts light and immaterial things into something tangible and possibly doable, that's the goal. That's the holy grail that we should look for as photographers, for ourselves in the first place, to give justice to this, hunger that is devouring our soul every day. Like, I want to do better. I want to be, I don't know, whatever the top photographer in my genre or in my area, in my town. You set your bar and you go for it. But don't be intimidated. £100 in paper seems kind of crazy. Like, what? £100 just for 25 sheets? Yeah, I know that. But would you imagine a 3-star Michelin chef cooking and cherry picking all the ingredients and then serving the whatever meal on plastic dishes? Not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. And I won't even name or mimic Gordon Ramsay, but it's not gonna happen.
No,
it's not gonna happen. And there's a reason. There's a good reason for it.
Exactly. And I think it's quite a useful little comparator there as well, is that you don't eat like that every day. It's for something sort of special. So especially if you're just starting out with printing, choose your favorite image of the year to start with. Choose your favorite image of the month, maybe, or something that you would like to, something that you keep looking at on your phone, but you think, actually, I'd like to have that up in my house. And you're investing in something that then gives back to you every time you see it.
Absolutely. That's very well put. And I would say that a conservative approach to the matter. So like you said, just pick one or two or three, your greatest hits of the year, and go for it. And treat yourself trying to put these onto paper. Talk to people that print. It's plenty of YouTubers and plenty of people giving even contents for free. You don't even need to invest money at first. Then maybe if you want to go deeper, you can attend classes, specific courses, and get involved into this art by itself. But to begin with, it's fairly approachable. And honestly speaking, modern printers, inkjet printers, are just fantastic, just amazing. What the things that you can put on paper relatively simply, it's unbelievable. So it is not that super complicated process as it could have been 20 years ago. frankly speaking. So I
Mm.
really encourage everyone to try.
Yeah, the technology has moved on an awful lot, hasn't it? It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's even doable at home, but still,
Oh, yeah.
I've always found that sort of working with someone like yourself, or when you want something printed, you can't stock all the papers at home. You can't have everything, and and if you want a bit of extra input and specialist knowledge, it's there. You don't have to spend
Yeah.
hundreds buying a printer for your home if you're only going to do it once every so often. Get somebody
Yeah,
who
exactly.
knows what they're doing and who has the full range, and work with them.
Exactly. And even with that, if you work with them, they will share the note. They will consult you. They will give you tips. They will suggest these or that option, these or that
Mm,
workflow, these or that curve. And, and you can play with them knowing that there is someone proficient enough that will take your hand and will take
mm,
you to the end of the process safely.
mm,
And still you will learn. Still, it will make you a better photographer. Because guess
mm,
what? More often than not, files don't render nicely on paper, not because of the paper. That's another a myth that we should debunk. It's not because of the
mm,
paper or the
mm.
printer. It's very often because of the file.
Yeah.
And this comes back to us as photographers. And that's why I said it's so important because it forces you to be a better photographer.
Mm,
Because otherwise you smack your face onto your limits, your, you know, holes in the workflow or things that you overlooked blatantly and you didn't even
mm,
know, you weren't aware. And all of a sudden, like, oh, wait a second. What's
mm,
this? Why is not showing whatever the details in the shades, or why everything is blown up? Why is so red? Okay,
mm,
let's go back to
mm.
Photoshop.
Absolutely. I think it's important to have in mind the end that you're aiming towards. And this comes with experience, of course, but when you're doing things commercially, one of the things you need to know is things like aspect ratios, because you've got to know what size the advert's going to be, how big the image is going to
Sure.
be in it, and so on. But I think also worth thinking about is how you're going to present an image, because then you can shoot it accordingly as well. How do you want the shadows to look? Are you doing something that is going to be like a glossy magazine advert where you're going to have quite black blacks, and you want to shoot for that in mind? Or are you going to do something that's going to be printed on a fine art paper where there's a little bit more nuance in some areas, but whatever paper you're going to go on, whatever medium it's going to go on, can actually affect the whole process from pressing the button, all the
Oh,
way through.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, definitely. Which is also why, having to work with art directors and agencies could be amazing, but could
Mm.
be also nightmarish for the same reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm slamming an open door with you because I'm sure that in your career, sometimes you have to deal with, not exactly the type of information that you would have needed
Mm.
in the first place before actually
Mm.
taking the picture.
Oh, yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I've been there. I know how it works.
Oh, yeah. And people viewing the image on an uncalibrated monitor down the way and saying, this color doesn't look right. And you're thinking, oh, good grief.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another reason why we should print more and why we
Yes.
should offer, the print version of whatever the file to our
Mm.
clients. Because with that, you control. You,
Yeah.
you take control of the whole thing. You're back to the chef analogy.
Mm.
You are given the thing properly served on the plate with all the design and then the colors and everything, all the bits in place as you envision that. When we rely on monitors, that's another episode. Maybe we
Oh,
can talk
gosh,
about
yes.
that.
Yeah. That's too much for today.
Right. So,
Yeah.
but when we rely on that, well, good luck. It's
Mm.
literally a Russian roulette, and
Mm.
you don't control anything. You don't know what they are going to look, and yeah, it's just
Mm.
Godspeed.
Yeah, exactly. And on the business side of things, and as an artist, sort of wanting to safeguard your own reputation, it's worth understanding things like with some types of print, the way it's done, as you demonstrated in a workshop I've been to, they fade. So do you want someone to be pointing to an image which is half faded on their shelf and someone says, oh, who did that? And then that's your name comes up.
Yeah.
It's been printed on cheap paper that doesn't do it any favors, and it's been printed using a method that is still light sensitive, and it's been sitting in sunlight.
Yeah. That's embarrassing, honestly, for this industry. The fact that we still globally, we still print a whole full lot of silver allied paper, which was a brilliant idea 130 years ago. 130 years ago, though. And nowadays, frankly, I'm appalled, by looking at the figures and see how many square meters are printed every year still, with all the chemical waste, with all the the issues that come with that type of process. But you are right. Even ignoring all of that, let's assume that it stays behind the scene. Just looking at the product that pops out of that from that workflow is just not up to the game anymore. Like I said, it was a brilliant idea 100 years ago. But nowadays, there's no way you can keep up with the informations, the accuracy, the crispness, the colors that we can capture, edit, and actually print with inkjet printers or plotters in general. So, yeah, I I actually proudly wave this color, the faded out, and embarrassingly greenish prints during workshops, just because I want people to see. I'm not talking about fairy tales. It's not like might happen. No. I'm telling you, it's guaranteed. It happens, and it happens throughout months, not even years. Your client will come back to your shop or your studio, and with the same issue, and will ask you, "What's this? I thought I hired a pro, but I probably could have bought this online for a few pennies." And he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And as a professionals, we should make sure that we are providing quality. The archival grade, the museum grade, all these big words are there for a reason, because they can give us selling points. Okay, so it's great because there's actually words that express what we can provide to our clients. Why this justifies a higher cost hiring a pro, because everything from the camera, the glasses, the editing, the expertise, let alone your background, all the years that took you to be the incredible talent you are now. Plus, I'm providing you a professional product printed according to the museum grade standards. Can you imagine if you are the client? When we buy things, we all buy things. Sometimes we sell, but most of the times we buy. When we buy things, we love to learn the story behind the product. We want to convince ourselves that whatever we are buying is really worth every penny we are spending. It's psychological. We are justifying the fact that we are buying something. And the more, let's say, the less compulsory is the buying. Let's say I'm not buying bread and butter and milk because I need to eat, but I'm buying luxury.
Yeah.
I need a story to tell myself why I'm buying this luxury. Now, if the luxury is a supercar or is a perfume or is an expensive watch, guess what? Look at their advertisements. Well, you are a commercial photographer. You know how much they need to create visually and from a semantic standpoint to justify 20 grand on a watch or 300 on a perfume and so on and so forth. But photography has been depleted to a disposable service for 20 years over the last 2 decades. And people don't see the value in that anymore unless we re-educate the market and we show them that, yes, that's true. That's the cheap version. That's why you hire me. And that's the professional version. See the difference? This is going to last 300 years. That's going to last 3 months.
Yeah,
Which
it's
one would you
finding
buy?
those ways of differentiating yourself, and it's worth educating yourself as a photographer, because it makes a big difference to your business. You're providing products that are quality and that last. And as you also alluded to, if you go for the cheaper products, then you've got to consider the environmental impact and so on as well. So
Mhm.
these things do matter. It's not just ink on a piece of paper at the end of the day.
Yeah,
There's a
definitely.
bit more to it.
Yeah, well, 10 years ago-ish, I started to cooperate with Canon Inc., so Canon Tokyo in Japan.
Mm,
And they were asking me and a few other guys in the industry some sort of tips and consultancy to develop their printing branch. And I remember that the vision of Canon CEO, okay, so the top guy in the
hmm
pyramid,
hmm
was we need a cleaner way to print.
mm,
And we're going to invest hundred millions of dollars and 10 years at least to develop this. And I was like, this is amazing. What a vision to have for a
yeah,
CEO.
yeah.
It was talking about the environmental weight, the footprint, the carbon footprint, the chemicals and the waste and the animal parts, because
Mm,
people don't know, but in a silver aligned paper, there are animal parts. And that's another thing that more and more people are sensitive to. So
yeah.
it's just the world evolving, hopefully for the best. But
Mm,
when you see this type of transitions, you probably can tell by the tone of my voice, I get all excited because
mm,
for once I can see a business, a large business, an amazing, respectable brand as Canon, investing a huge in a lot of money and time and engineers and manpower to make the world a better place in both ways.
mm,
Less impacting environmentally and better from a quality standpoint. That's the virtuous path we all
mm.
should take, in my opinion.
I mean, it's the right thing to do, but it's also becoming, if you want to be mercenary about it, it's also becoming an important selling point for
Oh,
businesses.
absolutely.
I think, ideally you want people just to do it because it's right, but you think your customers are often going to be interested in these things, So yes, if you say that you are an environmentally friendly vegan business or something, and then they discover that there's a photograph of you eating a beef burger or something, that doesn't tend to fit with your brand. But similarly, you might not have realized, as you say, with the printing processes, are you using something that's consistent with your business's values? Or are you risking being caught out?
Yeah, yeah. So you're so right. And when I'm hired to rebrand photographers, it's funny because they think that branding is a logo.
Yeah.
And yeah, a logo is part of it,
Eh,
definitely.
a small part, really, at the end of the
Exactly.
day. Yeah.
Exactly. You're right. But it's a galaxy. It's so much more stratified and complex than that. And you're right. You have to align everything in your
Mm,
business with whatever the core value of your brand. And yeah, you just described it nicely. So thank you for that. It's very, very important and people tend to forget it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're listening to the way you talk about all these kind of subjects. You seem to have a very creative mind, but also a very sort of analytical mind. Do you see
Mm.
yourself as mainly an artist, or perhaps partly a scientist, or how do you view yourself?
Okay, it must be because I'm Gemini, and so there must be there must be two sides of me. But I would simply put, I would say that maybe I found in science or a more scientific and logical approach, a way to control my insecurity or anxiety. And so if
Hmm
I can find scientific evidence and grounding for a creative idea,
hmm
I feel less of the imposter syndrome and more of, okay, I'm fully equipped. I'm backed by whatever science
mm,
and I can go full steam in this direction. Whereas if it would be only creative, probably I wouldn't have the guts to start almost the day. So
mm,
I kind of need these grounding, I think,
mm.
to go on. Now I'm probably a little bit exaggerating, but just to give you the idea, the two essences are necessary for me. my
Mm-hmm.
personality.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm quite geeky, and for me, I use those things as tools. It's like my creativity is fed by sort of the understanding of technology or delving into the science. And as you say, having evidence behind you, again, when you're talking to customers, that gives you confidence.
Right? Yeah, it really does. When
Mm.
I'm consulting for printing, you can imagine,
Mm.
I'm talking in a way that I'm not actually fearful to be proved wrong, because
Mm.
I'm not giving you my idea. I'm like, well, I think red is better than green for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, personal
Mm-hmm.
reason. I'm
Mm.
actually telling you the thing. Yeah, I will make sure that this complies with the artistic idea, but I'm also making sure that I'm telling you what actually works, technically works.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't, I'm going to point out why it doesn't. And it's not
Mm.
because you wanted to shoot red on red, but it was probably because the lighting pattern wasn't correct that
Mm.
day, or
Mm-hmm.
something wrong happened during the editing. And either ways, we can adjust it. You can maybe shoot again, or we can adjust the editing.
Mm.
It doesn't matter. Whatever is the whatever it takes, I will make sure that once on paper, it will be the best render possible.
Mm. Yeah. So I suppose then thinking about those kinds of strengths and weaknesses. I mean, we met through judging print
Hmm.
competition,
Yeah.
and each judge tends to have areas where they're a little bit stronger, where it's more their natural way of being, and each judge tends to have areas that perhaps they look to other judges to fill in some of the gaps for them. So, how would you describe yourself as a judge?
Huh. Nice question. So again, I think there is a dualism in my nature. I'm definitely a storytelling driven judge.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid, probably they would have said that I was away with the fairies. And because I can actually see or literally invent stories out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't believe.
Right.
And that's a blessing, a curse, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, all right. And on the other hand, I'm also, because of the printing side of the competition, I'm also very much attentive to the printing and the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, in this beautiful teamwork, which is panel of judges, I can feel my peers looking at me for the aspects they know I know what I'm talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
as well as I'm looking at them for their help and support in aspects that I'm less equipped for. Let's say,
Mm.
and that's another thing that I love about competitions. The panel is really a crew. It's a team. It's a team playing the same game. It's not about egos pulling and
Mm.
pushing.
Mm.
It's about a team. It's like when it's literally the Fellowship of the Ring. You have the wizard, you have
Mm-hmm.
the warrior, you have the dwarf, the hobbits, and this and that, the elf. So you have different people with different backgrounds and different knowledges, and
Yeah.
in combine they produce this beautiful thing, which is a team that will possibly give justice to your print.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great experience because each person has their area of expertise, and as a judge, you might be a fellow or awarded or whatever in your particular genre, but when you encounter other genres and other people's perspectives on things, you just keep learning. It's a permanent learning curve. And another thing which I think is worth mentioning about, especially things like these big print competitions, is that you've got a multicultural perspective. You've got
Mhm.
judges from different countries coming together. It's not just all English men,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a mixture of men and women and people from different countries and people with different perspectives, different backgrounds. And that is so enriching.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's almost magical. It always amazed me when you can hear from people that comes from a completely different culture and mindset, and actually bringing your attention to aspects that you might have overlooked completely, or you might have
Mm,
interpreted in a completely different way. And you're right, it's so fulfilling and it's so nice. And let alone that if you are the entrant, you rest assured that the blend of people in the panel would possibly bring you the best and most, I would say, multifaceted feedback that you could hope for, which is priceless, really. It's priceless. It doesn't matter if it's going to be a merit, a gold, an 82, an 83, or a 72. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the outcome, it's amazing. There are people from all over the globe coming and, just for the sake of beauty and for the sake of the industry. Isn't this amazing? It is. It really is.
Yeah, and I think there's always so much to learn from mixing with different types of people and just being open to listen. We can get so caught up in our own ways of doing things and so on that having this difference around us really helps. I mean, even for me in my personal life, I mean, I'm married to a German, and we our backgrounds, our cultures, certainly if you take the stereotypes, are very different. But yet together we kind of almost created our own culture, which is not quite a traditional English one, not quite a traditional German one. It's so I mean, how do you find that? Because of course, you've got a cross-cultural relationship as well.
Oh yeah. Well, how much time do we have? Because
is she listening in at the back? Yeah.
No, thank God she left.
Yeah. Oh,
good. Yeah, in our marriage, we definitely leave something. You're right, some sort of, I would call it, I don't know, maybe a fantasy world that is made of our own personal rules and bits of the relative cultures that we brought in our relationship. And even if Sarah actually spent a lot of time in Italy before meeting me, I mean, so she was used to Italians and our culture way before we met. But still, it's interesting because it's so, I would say, interesting when we talk about things or something happens and you can tell that our reptile brain works differently in the first place, and then we come to terms and we actually most of the times nicely come to a common ground. But like I said, I see this as a wealth in a couple.
Yes.
And I found myself like all of a sudden out of an cultural echo chamber. And finally I was able to see the world from a different perspective. And, and even read news from a different perspective or talk to people with a different angle and being more open. Now, Italians tend to be, okay, I don't want to sound rude, but we tend to be kind of judgmental or self-righteous or, we know better because this and that. And I reverse this into, no, we are just luckier because, of course we are surrounded by beauty, either landscapes or monuments or, let alone cities and stuff.
Art and music and
right. So,
yeah.
But that's not because I've done anything really to contribute to it. I'm just lucky. I was born here. Oh, guess what? I was born in Venice. Not that I have a medal for that. So if anything, I feel I have a debt. And to extinguish this debt, I have to do something positive. I have to give back to the world. That's how I see it. Therefore, when I talk to Sarah, and whatever she brings to the table, it's great because it can help me provide it or transforming my reasoning and my ideas into something that actually could be more fruitful and usable for someone else in the world.
I think it's that being able to understand that there are other perspectives, other ways of doing things that are different but not wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Just as a silly example, when my wife and I had not long been married, and we met for a meal after we'd just flown over to Germany to visit family, and yes, this is about my poor mother-in-law, bless her, but there we go. So we're having a meal there, and we had some fries with it, and I proceeded, as I normally do, to put salt and pepper on my chips. Yeah, see, you're a reasonable person. You've reacted totally reasonably to this. That my mother-in-law went, "You can't do that."
a bit
Like
like a bit like Italians with cream on carbonara, I guess.
Yes, probably, yes. Yeah. Or pineapple on pizzas, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, she's just sort of looking at it with horror. It's well, you can, and I've been doing it for years, and it's quite nice, actually. Would you like to try one?
Yeah, I tell you,
just too different.
to traveling a lot has been, again, a blessing, of course, because it gave me the opportunity to meet people from all over the world and, question myself and put aside my Italian righteousness and starting to be more open and be more like a half plenty glass ready to receive more water. And and I would recommend anyone to travel as much as you can, even if the few days before traveling we kind of feel lazy and we don't really want to go because I'm busy. I don't want to pack my thing in the luggage and so on and so forth. Right? That's the awful bit. But then once you are in motion, things start to be exciting, and actually once you are back, you are so pleased that you actually made it. So you feel like you accomplished something, as in you learned something, you met someone. Either you saw old friends, or you learn something new, or you got new friends. Either ways, it's a contribution to your life, and you are going to be a better human being for that matter. And it's amazing. There's nothing better than traveling. However, it also took me away from home for so long. And so if I have a regret, is that probably I didn't see my children growing up much. That's the downside. So that's the curse. But the bless is that now when I talk to them, I can hopefully convince them that no, life goes larger than Italy. And you wouldn't believe, but there's a whole world outside our boundaries. And, you will be pleased discovering all the corners, the shades, the cultures, the colors, and the flavors around this spinning earth.
Would you say it's affected you as an artist?
Oh, totally. If anything, because like I said, probably my mindset was already geared up by the beauty that surrounds me, but at the same time, talking to other people gave me, you wouldn't believe it, but for instance, the color, let's say, the usual color palettes change over time. So I found myself that I tend to use, for instance, different colors now than what I used to paint with 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that this is a result of the travels around and the meeting people or even having different foods and different flavors. Not a pineapple, maybe, but on pizza. I wouldn't go that far, but
yeah, you don't have to do absolutely everything, So it's not all necessary. It's like, I've tried plenty of French food. I've lived in France for a bit. Love that, but I'm not going anywhere near snails. Sorry, not happening. But yeah, I think it's if an artist is thinking, well, how can I get more inspiration? It's like mix with more people.
Oh, totally.
Travel, see something different, because that's where the creativity in your brain comes from, is two things that have not been related together yet, and all of a sudden the spark between them.
In the old masters, they all traveled through Europe. Now we might say, well, but that was because the nature of the business back then worked in a way that they have to have someone paying for their living, literally, and the masterpiece they were painting or carving, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's true. But it's also true that Leonardo traveled throughout Europe. He actually didn't die in Italy. He died in France. Any painter, from Michelangelo to Raffaello to literally, you name it, all of them travel, every single king and queen and marquise and kingdom and big or small countries at the time And rest assured, they all absorb things, and all these informations, in a way or another, were infused in their masterpieces, which is the reason why
Mm.
critics can tell you when they reach maturity as an artist. They can tell, okay, this is an early Raffaello, this is a midway Raffaello, this is top-notch Raffaello. A
Mm.
path, the life journey he went through was part of the maturity as an artist. Inevitably, artists
Mm.
breathe and see and consumes literally things around them. And
Yeah.
in a way or another, subliminally, consciously or unconsciously, we put what we see into what we do, really.
Yes. It all influences. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So with what you offer and do at conventions with your judging room, where you offer opportunities for people to get greater feedback on their images, there, I mean, presumably you're working with a different set of judges every time. So you're bringing these different mindsets, these different things into that setting as well.
Yeah, and the judging room was, it all started because there wasn't a print competition that year. And there wasn't,
Ah,
because we were right after COVID and there
yeah.
was, some issues. And then at that time was WPPI
Hmm.
was transforming itself into something different with a different format. So long story short, there was a gap here for the print competition. So me and
Yeah.
Sarah got this idea of, you know what, we can still keep the mood and the flavor of a print competition without the pressure of a print competition, but
Mm.
we can actually talk as if, and with that, we can dissect pictures with a panel of judges that instead of having 30 seconds, can have 3 minutes, 5 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes
Hmm.
talking over the same print.
Hmm.
So we did that, and funny enough, at the show floor, we have more people than any other booth and any other large or small lab exhibiting, because
Hmm.
people were so, and still is, so thirsty for learning. And when
Mm.
you have people like Tony Hewitt or Jerry Gionis or Melissa or or Gurveer
Hmm.
and all these people traveling the world and with this camaraderie mindset and hugging, and they couldn't wait to have an opportunity to talk and explain and share their passion,
Mm.
and with that teaching. But it wasn't like, okay, now you listen and I'm going to preach and teach. It was more like, oh my god, this is amazing, let me explain why it's amazing, why it's working, or
Mm.
oh, you know what, with a different whatever the beat, it could have been, XYZ, and that's priceless.
Mm.
In more recent years, we are running the judging room, particularly in London during the convention with the societies. And with this format, instead, we focus on the 79 and below, which
Yeah.
is even more critical in a way, because, I mean, critically important, because we can talk and dissect and make people aware of what presumably didn't work. Now,
Mm.
the way the judging room works is that we have a panel of judges, and very often, some of them, if not all of them, were also judging the real proper competition.
Yeah.
Then we reshuffle the groups, because all these people are offering for free their time. They're volunteering to
Mm.
support the industry. And they're
Mm.
there just for the sake of the people sitting and taking the time to absorb information from multi-awarded, amazing talents and even better human beings. And so, yeah, every time is a different group,
Mm.
and every time is a feast,
Mm.
because you wouldn't believe, just give them time and give them the opportunity. You will see the passion just flooding the room,
Mm.
and these conversations are so fulfilling, so
Mm.
insightful, so inspiring. I can't have enough of that. Literally, every time we shut down the show, I'm like, I can't wait to start it over again, because it's just amazing.
Yeah. So is it received in a similar way in different countries? Would you say
Yeah.
there's that kind of passion wherever you've taken it?
Oh yeah, it's transnational. There
Mm.
are no boundaries for art,
Mm.
and in general for knowledge. And I can see the same passion, the same aspiration, the same traction over photographers from Greece to Italy to France to Sweden to the UK, or Ireland or North America, Australia, New Zealand. It doesn't make any difference. Well, it doesn't. I mean, every country has its own flavor, and some things are maybe more popular, some a little bit less. There are different trends ish. Far less now, more like that 30 years ago. Another perks of the globalization, I guess. But passion-wise, I think the photographers are all driven by the same energy.
I suppose then, when our passion becomes our work, it can sometimes be difficult to know where to draw boundaries and how much work of what we're doing is work, how much of it is fun. So when you do a judging room at convention and you're also doing other things there as well, how much of it is kind of your downtime, relaxation, or what is work? How do you make that kind of distinction for yourself, and how do you unwind?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's very easy to simple to answer. I don't. I don't unwind, and I don't have boundaries, which is I'm being silly a little bit, but yeah, that's the thing that I'm struggling with, because I'm so deep diving into these subjects that I really cannot stop. And I find hard, even at night, I find hard not to look into things or answer an email or or scroll my feed, because I'm constantly in motion, which is something that I wouldn't suggest to anyone. So that's not healthy, because even the time off will actually create the space for you to fill up that space, that vacuum, with more creative ideas. Whereas constant flow might be simply overwhelming and at some point just too much. When I was in the Air Force, I remember we were looking into data, and there was an interesting phenomenon. The F-18 pilots were having way too many near miss or crashes or mishaps, and particularly with the F-18. And there was literature about that, and there was like, why is that happening? And the reason was, at the end of the day, they figure out that the reason was there were too many so-called MFD, so multifunctional displays on the cockpit. So basically, these pilots weren't used to such a huge workload, reading things on screens all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And basically, too many informations were equal to no information. And that was the origin of the issues. And I think that's part of how our brain works, really.
Yes.
Right?
I think so. Yeah, I think we naturally have to make some things down to an unconscious level, because we can't consciously process all of the data around us all the time. So our brain forms shortcuts for things we do regularly, so it just does them without us consciously thinking at all, which is what you kind of, as you alluded to earlier, your reptile brain, if you like, that is exactly what it's for. You don't want to be standing there thinking, now if I stand here on these rails a bit longer with that big thing on wheels coming rather quickly at me, is something possibly going to happen? No, you just react. You do something quickly because it's essential for your safety, but it can also become just, so many things can become habit. They can become routine. You don't think about how you put the coffee on. You don't think about, aspects of what you're doing if you're not careful when you're driving sometimes, and things become subconscious. And part of that is necessary, because if you had to literally think about everything, like on my desk in front of me, if I had to think about every aspect of it, you'd never finish a day.
Yeah, exactly. That's very right. So yeah, like I said, it's important to discipline ourselves. So I was kidding a little bit when I said I don't stop. I do, of course, at some point, but I feel that it's much more productive to hyper focus for a few hours rather than dragging myself over 12 or 18 hours of work. But clearly the quality can be constant, can it? So Yeah, that's what I said.
Mm.
But with that being said, it doesn't help that I have clients and friends from all over the world. So every time zone, kicks in when the other one, kicks out. So it's
Yes.
kind of a constant flow. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, as your anecdote about the Air Force sort of reminded me, there was another one about an Air Force that tried to produce an average seat that would fit the average pilot, and it didn't work because there is no average person. Nobody has completely average measurements to parts of their body, and you think, well, when it comes to what we do for work, it's sort of, it's an average 9 to 5. That's what everyone should be doing. But then, as you alluded to, for some of us, really focusing in great depth for shorter periods of time can be much more effective. And you have to work with your brain the way, that works for you, rather than just trying to force yourself into becoming this kind of non-existent average.
Bravo, Joe. That's a really, really strong point. The inner voice we all have, wherever that voice is, however it sings, it doesn't matter. We all have one. Now, more often than not, from school to family to friends or coworkers or boss at work, we have been told that we were wrong or we weren't enough. We weren't quick enough. We weren't proficient enough. We weren't enough in general. And that's that sort of litany that can more often than not convince ourselves that, yes, I do have a voice, but it's not worth it. And I'm probably wrong. But no, absolutely no. And especially being an artist, we need to listen to our voice. We need to, carve it out, and we need to share it. Take the leap of faith and pull it out, whatever that is, and show it to the world. Now, that takes a lot of other aspects, like the imposter syndrome, like the inherent shyness that people might have, plus the guts to bring your prints, enter a competition, and 5 random guys or girls, or let's say a mix of, will judge your work. And you're like, okay, why should I do that? For the sake of what? Well, I'm telling you, for the sake of yourself. If you are an artist, the best thing you can do to yourself is listen to your voice and be proud of whatever you can do, instead of trying to be something else or someone else. Because one thing is taking inspiration, one thing is parroting, one thing is conforming to the mainstream, whatever trend in place. That's not where you can find your voice whatsoever. Many years ago, when I first met Sarah, I remember that she was looking for her voice in a way, photography-wise. And I remember that I told her, look, this is the main thing, the main homework I'm assigning you. You have to find your voice. You have to find your style. And with that, you will see that all of a sudden everything will break through, which happened. And then she went on and she won awards over awards and accolades and fellowships and whatever. But you have to do that. You have to do that work first. You have to, just take the leap of faith, as I said, and trust yourself. It doesn't matter if you are not a Michelangelo. Who cares? Who cares? You might have 100 of a tenth of Michelangelo's ability in something. It doesn't matter. That's still you, and it's the unique you.
Well, yeah, and we need to create for our own sakes, but the world needs it as well. I mean, you imagine if people had just taken the attitude that, well, okay, the Greeks and the Romans, they basically did architecture. That we'll just stop there. We won't bother trying anymore. Mosaics, they've been done, so I'm not going to do that anymore. Or Michelangelo, he painted people, to the point there's no point painting people anymore, is there? That's been done. We don't just stop because somebody has mastered it in their style, in their way. The world needs the different voices, the different approaches. So
totally,
that comparing ourselves can be very destructive to our creativity. It's accepting that, no, we are not that person. No, we will not create what they create, but That's not the point. You create what you create.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. And I can tell you the printing works for so many photographers from around the world and different genres, gives me precisely that picture.
Mm.
It's like, oh my gosh, this is so unique, and at the same time so far from what I would have done. But
Mm.
that's the beauty of it. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of it, because every time you turn your head, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, this
Mm.
is interesting. Oh, this is a new, fresh way of portraying whatever the subject.
Mm.
That's the thing. You're
Mm.
right. It's not because it's been photographed a million times that we should stop to try. No, 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 no. That's where sometimes when we see things, and I don't know if you had the feeling, but sometimes I see it of things, or I listen to a song and I'm like, gosh, it's 3 chords in total, and
Mm.
still it's genius. Why
Mm.
no one thought about that before?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm under the shower and I'm singing the the thing,
Mm.
and it's so catchy, and it's still the same 3 chords out of 7 chords in total. I don't understand, how is that possible?
Mm.
But it is, and there is a before and after, and probably, the author before writing that song was like, what's the point? Why should I write another song?
Mm.
Aren't there
Mm.
enough songs?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
million songs in Spotify or Apple Music?
Yeah. Oh, not another song about somebody's relationship breaking up. We don't need any more of them. Or another song saying, I've just found the love of
Exactly.
my life. How boring,
Exactly. So I love to
Yeah.
indulge in different analogies than photography, because with
Yeah.
that, I hope we can give a different perspective to our audience and make them thinking like, forget about photography for a second, but would you
Mm.
apply these to music or
Mm.
food or vacations or engineering or, sport?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just take the homes that we live in. That you can get a row of houses that on the outside look the same. Each one's different on the inside. We all put our own stamp on it. It reflects
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
for better and for worse, but it reflects us. So when it
Sure.
comes to a print competition and someone's thinking, oh yeah, but there's a Chris Anderson entering this. There's a Hannah Nerett. There's a
Mhm.
Therese Asplund entering this. What's the point in me doing this? They do it so much better. It's like, no, no, no. That's their voice. Bring your voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come and join
Absolutely.
in, and you can often end up then being challenged where people say, oh well, I don't know all that much. I've kind of self-taught, and you think, well, look, there are kind of guidelines for composition. But sometimes the true genius is being able to break them in a new way.
Yeah.
So when someone comes in with something and says, oh, I'm not sure whether it's quite right, you think, let's just have a look. Show us your
Mhm.
work, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't be intimidated because there are the big guns around.
Mm.
In the first place, they weren't big guns. They
Mm.
were where you are now at some point
Yeah.
in their career. But like I said, they took the leap of faith. They decided to do something, to try out. And guess what? They became the whatever, the Kelly Browns, the Anna Nerett, the
Mm.
Sarah, the
Yeah.
Jerry, and so on and so forth
Yep, exactly.
afterwards. But
Mm.
they weren't born with that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully people will feel it is worth giving it a go. It is worth trying. And the feedback is so helpful. If you can get along to a judging room, if you can get along to a live judging session, that's so much more interesting in many ways than just seeing the gallery or seeing what scores people get.
Oh yeah, totally, totally. And imagine that when you go and you visit cathedral, you hire someone to explain you all the paintings, the architectures, the beats and stories behind every stone.
Mm.
Well, imagine that it's the same thing. Instead of just going around the same cathedral without a guide,
Mm.
you can have that guide. You just sit at the judging
Mm.
room and you listen.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, everything will make sense. You will come home with a huge wealth of knowledge that otherwise would have been missed.
Yeah, exactly. So what opportunities do you have coming up where people might be able to come and listen to the judging room or to benefit from other input from yourself and from Sarah?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah, I'm super excited because later in July, we will disclose in a few days the all the details about it. But there will be an open roundtable live on our Facebook group, on Love Edit's Facebook group. So I encourage everyone listening to join our group. It's for free, of course, and it's all about editing, photography, art, beauty, and we discuss with our guests. And in this case, we will have, I would say, some of my closest friends in the industry, and at the same time, they happen to be, the key players for the main print competitions, such as Melissa Gionis and Terry Jones. And I'll have also, of course, me and Sarah, and there will be Chris Anderson speaking for the Aussies, and a few more will join us. So it will be a fantastic opportunity to talk about the upcoming print competitions and, in general, why people should enter, what drives these people working hard in a 707, almost 360 days a year to make it happen for the sake of the industry. Let's talk about that, and let's have fun.
Yeah, great. Look forward to that. Any other ways in which people can keep up to date with your work, websites or social media? What's the best place to look at?
Okay, so yeah, definitely, like I said, the Love Edits Facebook group is where we post what's going on, what's boiling in our professional lives, as well as the Love Edits website. And you can look for me at DarioRighetto.art on Instagram, or also Italian wedding illustrator, which is the other account that I have, because when I paint for weddings, I do instant portraits and stuff for guests and bride and grooms and stuff, and which is amazing because it gives me the opportunity to spend hours with happy people. Finally, happy people for one day, happy people, everybody is smiling, having fun, and that's exactly what I love to do. And sketch and paint for them, and that literally gives me chills, and I'm so happy. That's my place.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing with our listeners. Really appreciate you being a guest today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Joe. I really, really, really enjoy our conversation, as usual.
That's great. Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. This is the Focused Professional Podcast.